So it's been a while since we have paid too much attention, I think, unless Sogen addressed Metta practice. Did he give any talks on that while I was gone? And so I wanted to return to that. Metta, or Maitri, is loving kindness. And it's really it was not a traditional teaching in this country with Zen until about 20 years ago. But it was very clear that people taking up this practice were really held back by self-criticism. And metta practice is really useful when that comes in. So metta is one of the 4 divine abidings. So loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, which is taking happiness in other people's good fortune and happiness, and equanimity, which is really the middle way, a response of the middle way, to know that everything that comes along feels good or bad or somewhere in between, and everything is impermanent, so everything changes. And so when we practice with equanimity, we are really living with an ongoing appreciation for impermanence, which doesn't mean that we cannot really enjoy the joys and have difficulties with the sorrows and feel sad. So tonight I want to tell you the story about how the metta practice came about. And then I want to review the sutra, which we chant on Thursday nights, although I think that we're going to, a couple of times a year we change the standard chants, and I think metta will change it to a different night so that the people who come, as most of you come certain nights and not others, so it's nice to switch what we chant in service so that you get a chance to get to know well various teachings. One of the things that begins in the Pali Canon, and Pali was a scriptural language. It was not a spoken language particularly, but it was developed and honed so that those who had heard the Buddha's teaching, initially they passed it along, they were oral teachings, but within about 100 years or 200 years they wrote them down, and they wrote them down in Pali. When you hear a teaching that begins, "Thus have I heard," you know that it comes from the Pali Canon, because that's what they heard. Can you imagine having a mind that could hear a teaching and maintain it word for word and pass it along in our current circumstances? I always appreciate how very different the cultural tone and tune is now than during the Buddha's time. Thus have I heard. So this is what we heard about this teaching. Many of the young monks who practiced with the Buddha were quite young. And the practice was always at night in the woods, among other things. And so these young people who were practicing, meditating at night in the woods, were scared of the dark, of the sounds, of the smells, and they figured that they were being harassed by wood spirits, by earth spirits. They were really frightened, and they didn't know what to do, but they couldn't meditate because they were too stirred up. And so they went to the Buddha, And they said, Buddha, Buddha, help us. We can't concentrate. And so he said, okay. And then he taught them the Metta practice, which has come down to us through the Metta Sutra, which I'm going to go through now. But basically the way we practice it now, when our mind is very disturbed, when our heart is very disturbed, we can repeat phrases, and there are some standard phrases, but we're always told adapt to the ones that are most useful for you, most needed for you. So the first one would be, may I be free from fear and anxiety. May I be free from fear and anxiety. So when you realize you're being really anxious, you're feeling really anxious, you can say that. Take a few breaths and plant the suggestion, may I be free from fear and anxiety. And then the standard way of doing it is then we address it to benefactors. So we picture our people who benefit us, who help us out, who support us, and picture them in front of us, and we say, may you be free from fear and anxiety. And then the next time you do it, you picture an acquaintance, somebody who you do not have any particular feelings about, but you see regularly. So it may be the checker at the supermarket or the person who delivers the mail. And you say, may you be free from fear and anxiety as you picture them. And then finally, the most difficult one is the difficult state, our own difficult state, or a difficult person in our life, somebody who has harmed us or we have really difficult feelings about. And picture them and say, may you be free from fear and anxiety. So that's the pattern. And then we go through the next visualization is, may you have mental stability, or may you be free from mental disturbance. And then the next one would be, may you have physical health, may you be healthy. And finally, may you be at ease. May you be at ease. And the first time I heard that, when I learned Metta, it was from Sharon Salzberg, because Chosen had invited her to join us during a sesshin. So we did a Metta sesshin. And she said, may you be at ease. And it had never occurred to me to wish that for myself. May I be at ease. Yes. That was my experience. So even if you're not at ease right now, it doesn't matter. You don't have to feel what you're saying, you just say it. And you put it, it's a wonderful practice to do. You sit down on your cushion before you do your daily practice, and you go through the metta phrases, and then you begin your meditation. That's how we use this practice. So the Buddha taught the young monks this practice, and before they knew it, everything in the area where they were sitting in the woods just settled right down. There was no more scary noises. There was no more churned up energy around them. There were no more obnoxious smells. That's the thing that got them the most, was the smell. And it was just sorted out. So then they could meditate. And that's how we use it. Because we can't, and it's metta practice and also precepts. One of the ways that they function is so that we are sorted out with ourselves so that we can actually relax and meditate and concentrate. When we're very stirred up by our own behavior or the behavior of other people, it's very hard to just quiet down, let go of our concerns, and follow the breath. be right here, be present. So I'd like to go through, many of you know this chant. I'd just like to go through it line by line because it's very, it's so useful. So it begins, this is what should be done. And this isn't a thou shalt, because if you don't do it, you're in trouble. It's just a recommendation for practicing by one who is skilled in goodness. And that word skilled, we talk about how we practice, we aspire to become more skillful in how we handle our life, how we handle our own feelings, how we handle difficult situations. More skillful by being aware of how we're speaking about it to ourselves and to others, how we feel about it, how we feel about it in the body, and actions that we take. Skillful meaning whatever we do contributes, or we have an aspiration for it to contribute to well-being, to benefit. Unskillful, you don't have sin in this way of practice. Unskillful means it leads to disturbance or harm or unhappiness. So by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. One of the things that Thich Nhat Hanh said was, we need to be willing to be peaceful. I was very struck by that. You need to be willing to be peaceful. So you can, next time you turn on the news, you can reflect, am I willing to be peaceful? Is this action going to contribute to my peacefulness? It's just good to be, be aware of what we are choosing and what we are evoking. Let them be able and upright. Upright is the word that Reb Anderson uses in his book on the precepts of being upright. And it is being accountable, being reliable, being responsible. So let us be able and upright. Able because we are really engaging a wisdom teaching that helps us become more skillful. Straightforward and gentle in speech. So straightforward is not, don't be fancy, be simple, be straightforward. It's helpful to be free to be straightforward. If we have some kind of idea that we need to be really, imaginative, charming, articulate, we can put a lot of pressure on ourselves. It's much simpler to be just straightforward. And some people are just naturally more straightforward. And gentle in speech. Gentle in speech does not necessarily mean you have to be like soft-spoken and a little bit smarmy. But aware that your speech is going to have an effect on others. Just be aware of who you're speaking to and that you want your speech to connect in a way that is useful and connecting. Humble and not conceited. I was talking with one of you yesterday about humility and shame. And one of the things is that when we feel shame, we are grabbed by ego, the self that has to be a certain way and is falling short and is seen. So in a way we could say shame is observing yourself as an object with a very unfriendly gaze. So we have a choice. when we find ourselves feeling shame. How many in this room have ever had that experience? It's unanimous. We have a choice. We could stay in that state and stay with our criticism of ourselves, or we could bring metta practice up. We could bring the sympathetic eye. May I be free from shame. May I be free from this incredibly painful state of mind. That is not conceit. Conceited is also a cover-up, kind of a strategy. When you're conceited, it can be, well, look into it if you find yourself being conceited about something. What's it about? Look more deeply into it. But one way is conceited. Shame is feeling terrible about yourself. Conceited is having an inflated sense of self, and both of them are unstable and difficult in their own ways. Humble and not conceited. Contented and easily satisfied. That's a good one. How often during the day can you stop and say, right now at this moment I feel quite contented. Everything is in the right place. It's a good practice to really notice it. Because more usually what we do is we only notice it when we are unsatisfied. Easily satisfied. That means, to me, thinking about what are the most important things. And when they are met, enough to eat, shelter, friendship, hopefully good health. So we consider all of those. So each of these characteristics are practices in and of themselves. Unburdened with duties. Now, how many of us go through a day, push, there's so much to do. Or doing things because of a sense of duty, rather than using anything that we need to be doing as an opportunity to put our whole heart into it and bring about a good result. One that is pleasing and useful and not wasteful. Unburdened with duties. And frugal in their ways. Frugal. It's really useful. If you use that as a daily practice, you go into the grocery store and you say, okay, I'm going to practice frugality. Do I really need this? Do I really need this? Whatever it is, right? Do I really need to be going everywhere with my car now that gas is inching up, cost-wise, and also is not okay with the environment. So how to be frugal, how to cut back and how to cultivate simplicity, a simpler way of living, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful. So that means tuning in to the actual situation at the moment. What's needed? What can I do? What do I not need to do? Not proud and demanding in nature. So that is taking our own place, taking our own space, but not pushing aside anything that we are not responsible for or needing to have. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. And I always think of, instead of, it's one reason why we want to have a wise Sangha, because our Sangha can help us measure whether we are being respectable, patient, kind, useful, good, or not. But it's not the inner critic. It's not that quality. It's not criticism. So it's also our inner wise. Will I later reprove? If I say this, will I later regret it? So just being aware that everything has consequences. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. That's a wonderful phrase to evoke during our days when we're aware of what's going on in the world, or near and far. May all beings be at ease. That's the Bodhisattva vow, practicing for the sake of all beings. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small. So we're really, tapping all of the possibilities. The seen and the unseen, what we are aware of and what we're not aware of, which is way more. We're way more not aware of things than we are the things we're aware of. Those living near and far away. So this is the describing the expansiveness of loving kindness. Loving kindness. The word metta or maitri is the words. They're composed of syllables that mean both friend and rain. So when we think of bringing the heart of metta to the world, we are a friend. We bring the heart of friendship. And rain falls on every surface unselectively. It just falls where it falls. And so metta is very similar. Those born and to be born reminds me of living with keeping in mind the next 7 generations. Everything that we do is going to carry forward for many, many generations. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another. So, truth-telling. Or despise any being in any state. Very challenging. Most of us are pretty good, like 95%, but there's a certain 5% of the population right now where it's harder. It's harder because of the fear and the worry. Let none, through anger or ill will, wish harm upon another. Every thought, every word spoken has effect. We want to be very mindful about what we speak. As a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. This is another way of saying what Dogen talks about when he talks about parental mind. That recognizing that all beings are, and the way that Dharma is sometimes described as we've all been parents to each other, we've all been children of each other, we've all, over many lifetimes, been in every relationship to everybody we meet. So we bring parental mind forward with a boundless heart, should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world. And that can be a visualization. It's a wonderful visualization while sitting, in Zazen when you begin Zazen practice. Spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, including all sky creatures, all sea creatures, all earth creatures. Outwards and unbounded. Freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down. Those are the 4 postures for meditation. We can always, no matter what our position, no matter what our state of body is, because sometimes you can't sit, sometimes you can't walk. So you can practice metta lying down, standing in a long line, maybe to vote. Wonderful time to practice metta. This opportunity will be coming along for all of us. Free from drowsiness. Okay. That's sometimes possible and sometimes not. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. So metta, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity are the 4 sublime abidings, the 4 qualities of being that we can cultivate and enjoy. Not holding to fixed views. That's one thing that we discover in our practice. What are we holding on to? What is a view that is just like, feels like it's real, feels like it's the truth, based on what I've experienced? It's so important to recognize belief, view, opinion, right? Intention, just the characteristic of various kinds of thoughts. The pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires. Now, what is that, being freed from all sense desires? I think what it's referring to is being aware when you are gripped by desire of the senses. Because very often, if we are gripped and we're not aware, and then we enact behaviors that are not necessarily beneficial to us. So when we are freed from all sense desires, it means we are reliably aware as we live our life of our desires. Is not born again into this world. Is not born again into this world of forgetting. Forgetting the true, deepest, most liberated and gladdening view that the Dharma is all about. Is not born again into this world. In the old days, the early days of Buddhism, we talked about how it has to do with rebirth, and that when you really finally completely awaken, you are no longer born. You are freed from the cycles. We can look into what that is about. What does that mean? Everything can be understood in relation to our own life. And we'll look into it and make no assumptions about what anything that we read in Buddhism is about. We just take it as a practice for looking deeply into it. Okay, so I'd like to finish by singing the Metta Sutra, page 46.
This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, free from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being free from all sense desires, is not born again into this world.